All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast. As I continue to talk about each division ahead of the 2024 NFL season, right about now, I am going to take this time to talk about the AFC South. Now, last year, we saw three teams from this division finish with winning records, but only one was postseason bound, and that was the AFC South champions in the Houston Texans. And of course, for the Texans, they enjoyed a tremendous turnaround as they went from one of the worst teams in the NFL to a playoff team that won a game and got to the second round of the postseason. And a lot of people rather are high on the Texans heading into this season. So they enjoyed one of the greatest turnarounds in franchise history. But what will they be able to do as far as the Houston Texans go now that they have the targets on their backs? Okay. For quarterback CJ Stroud, I mean, this young guy is clearly the real deal at quarterback. But what's he going to be able to do for an encore? We saw him last year throw for more than 4,000 yards, 23 touchdowns, just five interceptions. And this young man, the sky, what can you say? The sky is the limit for him, okay? For me, credit to the Houston Texans because they are loading up on talent around CJ Stroud right now while he's on his rookie deal. We just saw the Texans lose running back Devin Singletary in free agency, okay? But then you go out there and you bring in Pro Bowl running back Joe Mixon from the Cincinnati Bengals. And, you know, Joe Mixon is a guy who brings the Super Bowl experience to Houston with him. Of course, the Bengals did make the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. He's also a quality runner as well as a receiver coming out of the pocket. You look at the Texans, they already had some good wide receivers in both Nico Collins and Tank Dell. You look at it last year, Nico Collins had nearly 1,300 yards receiving. Tank Dell was well on his way to getting 1,000 yards until he had that knee injury late in the campaign. And then you bring in former Pro Bowl wide receiver Stephon Diggs from the Buffalo Bills. And the bottom line is Stephon Diggs can go out there and produce. You know, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. He did it in Minnesota. He did it in Buffalo. Now he's going to have the opportunity to be a part of this offense with the Houston Texans. So that just gives them another option in that passing game. You've got tight end Dalton Schultz. And then, of course, you've got veteran Laramie Tunzel at left tackle protecting the blind side of one CJ Stroud. This offense is going to be very dangerous this year. And I'll tell you like this, for all of those fantasy buffs out there, I guarantee you a lot of these people that are into fantasy football are going to be looking at some of the players from the skill positions for the Texans early on in their respective fantasy drafts. Now, we know that D'Amico Ryans can coach up some defensive football. All right. The Texans lost outside linebacker Jonathan Greenard rather in free agency to the Vikings, but then they signed former Vikings defensive end Daniil Hunter. You team him now with Will Anderson, who, like Stroud, was a first round pick by Houston a year ago. So now you've got your bookend edge rushers that you're going to need in the AFC if you want to be able to continue to rub elbows with the big boys in that conference. So I look at the Houston Texans, and of course, one big question is going to be, will they be able to live up to the hype? And I think this Texans team is definitely a team to watch here in 2024. Now, for Jacksonville, it was a tale of two seasons for them a year ago. We saw the Jags begin the year with a record of 6-2, but then they would lose six out of their final nine games. And of course, that would allow the Texans to get in front of them in order to win the AFC South. And as the Jags fell short of winning the South for the second consecutive year, what will they be able to do to get back on track? And I think for the Texans to be in the mix to make it two AFC South titles in the last 3 years Trevor Lawrence has to play better. We saw the Jaguars go out there and pay Trevor Lawrence this offseason. In 3 years in the NFL, he is 20-30 as a starting quarterback. He's thrown 39 interceptions, which included 14 a year ago, and he's already been sacked 94 times. Trevor Lawrence has to take care of his business in order for the Jags to get better. You have talent there at the running back position with Travis Etienne. They lost veteran wide receiver Calvin Ridley to the Tennessee Titans, but they signed former Buffalo Bills wide receiver Gabe Davis. And I think if you watched Gabe Davis play in Buffalo, this was a guy who really never really scratched the surface as far as how good that he can potentially be. Will that potential show out in Jacksonville? We have to wait and see. You have tight end Evan Ingram, who is one of the better and unsung receiving tight ends in the National Football League, and I think he's still going to once again be a go-to target for Trevor Lawrence in this offense. You bring in another former Buffalo Bill and veteran center Mitch Morse to give some more experience and seasoning to this offensive line. I like the Jags defense, especially their pass rushers. You look at Josh Hines and Allen and Trayvon Walker, you're talking about nearly 30 sacks just between the two of them last year. Josh Hines, Allen, he's really gotten it going now as one of the premier edge rushers in the NFL. And after a slow start and a quiet rookie season, Trayvon Walker has really turned it on. Will he be able to keep it going? We got to wait and see. But for Doug Peterson's Jags, I think they need to get off to a strong start and they need to keep it going because to me, I think it was one of those last year. I think after Jacksonville won the AFC South in 2022, being that they were hovering around 500. I think they kind of figured that they could do it again. And the Texans simply got that momentum going last year, and they never looked back. Jacksonville's going to have to bring it for all 17 games if they want to get back to the postseason. You look at the Indianapolis Colts, and of course, last year was supposed to be a year of transition for the Colts, but they still managed to win 9 games while falling just short of making the postseason. Okay. But for head coach Shane Steichen, as he heads into year 2 with the Colts, what's he going to be able to get out of this team? The first thing, big thing, is Anthony Richardson, their first round pick at quarterback from a year ago. He's got to stay healthy. He only appeared in 4 games last year. Big physical guy. It's one of those, yes, he's big, he's physical, he's strong, but he still needs to try to avoid those hits because the Colts are going to need him out there, especially in the passing game. No more Gardner Minshew for the Colts to fall back on at quarterback, but they did sign veteran Joe Flacco. And of course, Joe Flacco, had a renaissance last year, if you will, with Cleveland. A lot of people thought his career was over. He came, off of the street and really filled in for Cleveland to help them get to the postseason. So that's a strong backup, a guy who's won a Super Bowl, a guy who's been a Super Bowl MVP to help bring Anthony Richardson along in his NFL career. You look at the running back position for Indy. Jonathan Taylor, he's got to get back to being the guy that he was at running back in 2021. I think that's going to be vital for this Colts offense. Wide receiver Michael Pittman Jr. continues to go out there and get it done. I think he could be a fantasy sleeper this year. And then this defense for Indianapolis with Pro Bowl defensive tackle DeForest Buckner, middle linebacker Zaire Franklin. I think this Colts team can be competitive, but will they be competitive enough to win the AFC South? And even if they don't win the AFC South, possibly get to the postseason, we got to wait and see. And then finally, there's the Tennessee Titans. And, for the first time since 2017, the Titans will take the field this season without Mike Vrabel as their head coach. Former Cincinnati Bengals offensive coordinator Brian Callahan is now the head coach for Tennessee. It's his first head coaching gig. And of course, he was basically brought there to get the most out of second-year quarterback Will Levis. Now, last year as a rookie, Levis was 3-6 as a starter, 8 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, completed just under 60% of his passes, excuse me. And it's one of those where this Titans offense definitely needs to get it going, and they have the firepower to make it happen. Of course, no more Derrick Henry at running back for the Titans, but you do sign former Dallas Cowboys running back Tony Pollard, and I think he can have an impact on this offense. You bring in former Bengals wide receiver Tyler Boyd, who follows his offensive coordinator to Nashville. And another big one for me is Tennessee signing Calvin Ridley. So now you've got a wide receiver room if you're the Titans. You've got Calvin Ridley, you've got Tyler Boyd, and you've got the veteran Duke Hopkins out there. So there's talent around the young quarterback to try to go out there and get it done. Tennessee's still going to be a stout defensive squad with the likes of Jeffrey Simmons at defensive tackle. You lose outside linebacker Danico Autry in free agency, but you still have Harold Landry. And then you bring in former Seahawks strong safety Jamal Adams, who basically is another linebacker out there on the field. The Titans are going to be competitive, but I'm not sure if they're going to be competitive enough to either A, win this division, or B, be a playoff team. I think at the end of the day, the AFC South is and will be the Texans' division to lose. They are the best team. They are the most complete team. And I do not see their head coach, D'Amico Ryans, allowing them to take a step back. I think what we saw from this Texans team last year was legit. Credit to this organization for building off of that. And like I said before, putting the talent around CJ Stroud while he's on his rookie deal. They saw what this team could do potentially last year, and they're building off of that. And I think this team has what it takes to win the AFC South and also make an impact in January. For Jacksonville, it comes down to the play of Trevor Lawrence. They need him to be more consistent. I think the Titans and Colts are growing as teams, but they're not there yet. So right now, I am rolling with the Texans once again to win the AFC South here in 2024. So, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank all of you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you haven't already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on the X, formerly known as Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it will be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365 that you can check it out. Drop a line and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. Also, as I continue to navigate through division by division breakdowns for the upcoming 2024 NFL season, be sure to check out this channel tomorrow as I will be discussing all things in the NFC South. So, folks, once again, my name is William Martin, and I am signing off. And I'm saying thanks once again for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. Be well, everybody.